At what moment did you realize that the person you'd been dating was utterly batshit crazy? When I went to break up with her and she said no, that's not how it works. We both have to agree to break up in order to break up. Yep. Okay, then we're not breaking up. I'm dumping you. She was very clingy and didn't give me any space to hang out with friends, etc. So I broke up. At that point I started realizing she was crazy. Every week she would keep sending me presents, bottles of wine, t-shirts, etc. In the beginning I find it funny. After a while it got annoying, so I asked her to stop. She proceeded giving presents to my friends and tell them it was something that belonged to me which I had left at the place. Dude, free crap. Dated a schizophrenic for a minute. She was well medicated and for the most part it seemed pretty mild. She had a few issues with being kind of out of touch with reality, but that's expected. Then she freaking stabbed me over her birthday cake. He called me a bunch of times in the span of a few minutes, like, inhumanly possible amount of times. He then accused me of cheating because the floor in front of my bathroom sink was wet. Yes, this was his reasoning. Found out she had made a blog about me, was posting my personal stuff. She installed Find My iPhone app on my iPhone so she could keep track of my location. She added all my friends onto her social media contact lists, even girls I dated in the past. Changed her username, replacing her last name with mine. Went through my phone, email, chat messages like she was on a scavenger hunt. Found out she was taking nude pictures of me when I was asleep and in the shower without my knowledge. Got her cop friend to do a background check on my ex. Would keep track of the number of condoms I had to see if I was cheating. I was 16 years old, and we were in her hot tub. I was talking about this episode of Futurama that I had seen the other night. It was the luck of the Freerish. She just blurted out, "You know, if you left me, I'd kill myself." I hadn't even thought of leaving her until she said that, and then that's all I could think about. I stayed with her for months and months because I believed she would have, and I couldn't live with the guilt. I stayed with her so long that I began to hate her so much that I didn't even care at that point if she did kill herself. It was an important lesson on learning when to leave a relationship. If anyone is concerned, she did not kill herself. As far as I know, she is unhappily engaged. I hadn't even thought of leaving her until she said that, and then that's all I could think about. The plot of Inception 2. When she was threatening to cut herself with a steak knife in our bathroom, and when I said I was going to call the police, she punched herself in the eye and said she would tell them I did it. That is fricked. He told me I should stop taking my birth control, lest I go to heck. I should also ask forgiveness for thinking it was a-okay to take it in the first place. Even if I weren't taking it for contraceptive reasons, I would take it for other health ones. The latter didn't matter to him. Birth control was a device for someone looking to act on Satan's calling them to behave whorishly. He gave me a whole spiel on how I was only hurting myself in the end by being so selfish. Also, he said no one would ever want to marry his child's mother, but initially it sounded like he meant it was because of her behavior. Nope, it was because she'd had their kid out of wedlock. How this didn't somehow apply back to him beats me. Bullet. Dodged. Religious rules on sex rarely apply to men. Well, except ones relating to homosexuality. Those only apply to men. When he said that my dad deserved to lose his job because he was being paid by the military to kill people. He wrote satellite code for phones. This was years ago. He never worked in the military, and he's quite sure that his codes weren't being used to kill people. I hated my boyfriend. Didn't totally realize it at the time, but I did. And this was the last straw. You insult my father and I will beat you down, okay? I'll just yell you, jerk. Wrote satellite code for phones. Paid by the military to kill people. The only logical conclusion. Between the first and second punches to the face, during a fight that started when I found sketchy crap on her phone. Please note I really hate myself for going through her phone, but she kept going through mine secretly and I really had nothing to hide, so I assumed she did. Bit of advice: if you feel the need to go through your significant other's phone, the relationship is already over. That last sentence is truth. Mine was kind of a whiny pain in the butt, but he bought us plane tickets to visit Savannah, where his friends lived, and I felt weird breaking up with him. and it was one of those things where it just kept dragging along, but I was beginning to realize he needed to go. This was about 5-6 months in. Then we went to his friend's party while we were Savannah. He got a bit drunk and started preaching to everybody about the freaking reptilian agenda. To anyone and everyone that would listen. For like 20 minutes. Lizard people. They're everywhere. And the government knows. I sat listening, shocked and horrified, until, being a little drunk myself, I just ripped him to freaking shreds. I was in the process of acquiring a degree in a research-based field, and I just tore his arguments apart without mercy. People were laughing at him, but I couldn't help myself. His own best friend came up to me later and said he was so sorry that had happened. I don't know what I would do if I found out someone I loved believed crap like that, and he was definitely not trying to hit on me. He was just as shocked. So that was an awkward plane ride home. I got real drunk. Hate to be this guy, but giggle reptilian agenda. I love the crazy buggers that push reptile overlords. It was the middle of January. She left my place without a jacket at the beginning of the night to go sit down on the sidewalk in front of the children's hospital. She spent all night out there in the freezing cold to show her support. She also wasn't eating or drinking anything. Also, she filmed herself picking up a guy at the mall, bringing him back to her place and getting him to massage her feet. The video was 4 hours long. She made me watch it to prove that she was faithful to me. A few weeks later she sucked a guy off in a closet at a Halloween party she brought me to. She was really hot and great in bed, but freaking crazy. Not worth it. He called me up after a year of dating. We hadn't seen each other in a week and he was sobbing. We're talking, throwing up and sobbing. He kept going on and on about how he missed me. Don't get me wrong. I missed him too, but I knew I was going to see him in a couple days, so I guess I was just level-headed with my feelings. I knew in that moment I was dealing with someone who was a little off, but thought it was just a rare moment. 3 messy years later, his boss calls the police to do a wellness check on him after he threatened to commit suicide on Facebook for the 100th time. We had a huge blowout of a fight where, for the first time in 4 years, I yelled at him. I went to visit him in the hospital before they took him to a psychiatric facility, and he sat there and explained to me how everything was my fault. I am done. This is about how I knew mine was crazy. When she asked if I could watch her kid while she went on vacation with her parents, I said, wait, your kid? You have a kid? We had been seeing each other for a year at that point. She asked me to euthanize my dog because he was taking up too much of our time, and before you ask, yes, he was old, but not so old and infirm that euthanasia was at all justified. And also no, I did not euthanize my dog as she requested, but I did dump my girlfriend. But I did euthanize our relationship, as it was taking away from my quality time with my dog. My ex-wife's mother had just died and I went to the funeral to be there for my ex. We were married for 8 years. My GF lost her crap when she found out I went to the funeral. I tried to explain to her that her mother had died and she told me, boo-hoo. People's moms die. At the time, my own mother was in the process of dying, and yeah, she knew this. My ex's dad had a good point when any of his kids asked why he stayed in touch with his other kids' long-term exes. You can't be expected to love someone for years and then just instantly unlove them because circumstances changed. All separate the excess. 1. Told me he had people following me because while he trusted me, he wanted to make sure I wasn't lying to him about where I was. 2. Lied to me about having cancer because he wanted me to feel bad and stay in the relationship. Mind you, he witnessed me lose my mom to cancer a year prior. 3. Decided and suggested he wanted me to do all types of sexual things with him and his friends, while also doing really hard drugs. I flew out of that relationship like a bat out of heck. Maybe it was when he took too many drugs and tried eating quarters while telling me he had to go meet George Washington on the school bus. Or possibly when he hit himself on the head with a sledgehammer because I told him I was going home. Could have also been when he held a knife to my cat when I told him I wanted to break up. Or perhaps it was after I finally did leave, when he left me 50 voicemails that went back and forth between calling me a W, telling me about which drugs he was doing that day to forget me, and begging for me back. Or a month later when he egged my new guy's house. Take your pick. I've got more. More please. When I got home from work and thought nobody was home, he jumped out of my closet kind of like a flying squirrel with a crowbar, demanding to know where the dude I was cheating on him with was. I was alone and not cheating on him. Then he knocked the doorknob of my main apartment door off completely and flying squirreled away. This is my favorite image ever. Flying squirreled away. Thanks for that. I told him his co-worker grabbed my butt at the party we just left. He slammed his phone down on the street, tackled me, and started choking me. The neighbors came out and asked if I was okay, and he started yelling it was none of their business and if they were smart they'd go back inside. I was so terrified to leave him after that. I was also very ashamed to tell anyone that I was with someone like that. It only ever happened when he drank, which was quite often. At least once a week we'd have an episode like this. I finally ended up telling my mom 5 months later, and she helped me move out of his place while he was at work. You poor thing. I'm so glad you were finally able to speak to someone and your mom helped you get the frick out. Hope you're doing okay now. She asked me to pick her up from her friend's house. Normally this wouldn't be such a big deal, but when I got there I discovered that her friend was her H dealer, and when she got in the car she was screaming about how pissed she was that she got shorted. For some reason I stayed with her for like 6 months after this. When I met her extended family, from BoJack Horseman, when you're wearing rose-tinted goggles, all the red flags are just flags. It was my first major relationship. I was in college. I was pretty excited and pushing things to move too fast. Her parents were a red flag. Her maturity was a red flag. Her emotional state was a red flag. I just looked past it all and said, when we graduate it will all be better. Well, that time got close, and I was invited to her family's Thanksgiving out of state. I met a lot of extended family, but then I saw a black flag, and I took off the goggles and it was blood red. All the people who married into the family, or were fiancés, boyfriends or whatever, had to sit at a separate, smaller almost kids table. I was greeted. They were all nice and greeted me. Then the flag went up. I hear you'll be joining us. Well, we have sort of a support group together. This family you'll be joining can be hard to get along with. We'll get your email. It's good to have someone to talk to when things get rough. The rose-tinted goggles fell off and I looked around and saw so many red flags. I didn't make a fuss the rest of the trip. Ate, was nice, thanked everyone, but told them I didn't think I would need the group. 1 or 2 said it was probably for the better and they understood my decision. We got back and I couldn't understand how I had tolerated all of this before. I broke up with her within a few weeks, shortly before graduation. After I graduated I left the state, which made things pretty easy. When I dated a girl we were both around 16-17, high school, mind you, and she would always have problems and tell me that something was wrong and then would refuse to tell me anything specific. That was hard to deal with on its own, but the real kicker was the time she was severely upset for a good 2 weeks and I got her to crack eventually, and she said she was worried about postpartum depression ruining our marriage. Ruining our marriage? Yikes. Might wanna get that checked out. I realized it when I was reading a chapter in a book about relationship violence, and every single item on a list of red flags reminded me of my partner. Also, I was lying about details of our relationship to my friend's family because I was afraid of what they would say in response. I had been dating a girl for a few weeks and realized I just wasn't feeling it in our relationship. So I politely told her that something just wasn't there for me, so maybe we should move on. She started sending me texts, like, a lot of them. One day I was in meetings all day and she sent me 184 texts. I counted. They started off with hey let's meet for coffee and talk, and progressed to frick you, I hate you, then into begging and crying and feeling alone, and back to meet for coffee and talk with a little bit of you put your penis in me, and you dump me, and then she started the entire loop back again. She had an amazing conversation with herself, and when I refused to take the bait, she started calling people in my office. She took my office number from my business card and started calling numbers. For example, mine ended in 7045, so she started with 7046, 7047, etc., and asked them to tell me to call her, and that I was such a special guy to her. She was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. When she started punching herself in the face when I threatened to call the police to make her leave, She told me that I would be the one going. She wasn't kidding either, she was throwing haymakers into her own face. Needless to say, I learned right then that she was wired a bit differently than the rest of us. She would follow me around everywhere I went and not tell me she was following me, as in, she would leave my house. Hours later I would go to class or to the store or something, and she would be stalking me in her car. She always checked up where I went. The funny thing is though, I was always loyal and faithful to her. She's the one who cheated on me. Crazy bee. When I tried to break up with him and he started stabbing himself in the thighs with a screwdriver while screaming, "Do you like seeing me hurt?" Well, now that you were gone, he had to get used to screwing himself. We were 16. I took her to my big family Christmas party. We were driving back with my family in our van. Christmas tunes blaring. Mum and dad in the front. My 9-year-old sister in the middle. Me and my girlfriend in the back. And that was when she decided to pull my dong out and start playing with it. "Oh come all ye faithful, you like that joyful and triumphant, maybe I should spit on it. Oh come ye, I wish I could frick you right here. To be Bethlehem. I don't see the problem. Sounds like a keeper to me." He was religious. I didn't mind and encouraged him and even went with him to church, but I wouldn't convert. Apparently I'm going to heck. Not quite bat crap crazy, but anyway, I was the day that I'd managed to snooker her into definitively being wrong about something. She had a thing where she was always right, or put better, never wrong. She would never admit she was wrong about something. It was always someone else's fault or there was a loophole, excuse, etc. So the day came when I'd finally got her pinned in a no way out corner, snookered, a logical trap, etc. "You were wrong," I said, after laying out all the evidence, making all my rightful claims, etc. She looked at me with a cold, emotionless, hard eye and said, "I'm not wrong. I'm never wrong." I was quite young and eager to please and looking to be loved, etc etc. But in retrospect, that was the day I subliminally knew the relationship was fricked. As far as I know, she's still not wrong and long-term single. Wasn't dating, but had a long-distance internet relationship when I was about 17 or 18. I was lucky it was long distance because I was able to easily cut off contact when, according to what she told me, a pregnant woman insulted them, so she and her friend kicked and punched her to the point that she had a miscarriage. She sounded like she took a certain amount of pride in it as she was telling me all about it over the phone. I dated a girl and her whole family was batshit crazy. Her would tell me I'm suffocating her and I need to back off, and then tell me I'm not trying hard enough. Would call me crying about something stupid and deny she ever called me. Her mom told me she runs a candle business online, and then when I asked how her candle business was doing another time, she had no idea what I was talking about. Dad would throw temper tantrums all the time. He would openly flirt and check our women out when we were out for dinner, and he rejected my Christmas present. Why did I date her? I was only 20 and her body was fan-freaking-tastic. Well, Hank, I tell you what, sometimes that butt is irresistible. When she started randomly licking my face and laughing hysterically, she does it without provocation, sometimes in very serious or intimate moments. I love every batshit crazy thing about that girl. We broke up normally. A few days later, a bag turns up outside my front door and it's soaking wet. I carry it inside and it's a hoodie I'd lent to her that was slightly warmed by wet. I thought nothing of it as it had been raining earlier that day and left it in my bath. I returned later to see yellow fluid coming out of it. She has pee on the jumper and returned it. I freaked out and went to contact her on FB and saw she'd been at a party and had burned a picture of me and then done the deed. Strange girl. When she decided to stop taking her meds, which I had never known she was on, at least, that was her excuse. But I couldn't ever tell what was truth or lies after riding the crazy train for months. Plus, if a zombie outbreak occurred and we couldn't get her meds, I would have chosen to be eaten by the horde rather than be stuck with her. Trip her and run, fool. I was the crazy one. I dated this guy who cheated on me and I never got over it, but continued to date him. I was so insecure and jealous. It would result in me calling all the time, getting upset if he looked at another woman or even talked to a girlfriend. Took me a while to sit back and realize what I had become. I broke up with him, and I'm now in an amazing relationship of trust, and importantly, I am very secure in who I am. I never want to be that crazy girlfriend ever again. I was dating a girl who was a bit into the party life but really sweet and kind. Didn't seem to be into anything too over the top. Then she broke into my house at 3 AM on a weekday when I had to work, woke me up and asked if I wanted to smoke an 8-ball of crack with her. I told her to get the frick out of my house. I leaned in for a kiss while we were okay a date, and when she said no I pulled away and respected her wish. She told everyone I sexually assaulted her. I worked with this girl for a while. We talked for a bit, started getting closer, and eventually we got together. A few weeks into the relationship, she got worried too attached. One day we went into our local town to do a bit of shopping, and I said that we needed to go because I had an event to go to. She lost her crap right in front of everyone, saying that I didn't have time for her. This wasn't true whatsoever because we saw each other all the time, we weren't working, etc etc. We then went back to mine because her car was there and she carried on losing her crap. So I got in my car and drove off. Later on I rang her and said I'm done with this relationship because it's toxic. The next morning, she came to my house and spent at least 3 hours ringing my phone and knocking on my door when I was sleeping. I eventually told her to go away, otherwise I'll call the police, and that was the last time I saw her. I knew she was into wrestling, watching it on TV, but it turned out that she wanted me to wrestle her in bed, too, or to wrestle each other in the bathroom to see who would get to use the shower first. Everything was turned into a form of competition, to see who could end up on top. I see nothing wrong here. When I went home for a few weeks, and she slept with multiple guys, started smoking, doing codeine, and acted as though it was all normal when I got back. She claimed that her dad is the resurrection of Satan, in the serious sense, not just as a metaphor for him being strict, and she claimed that she had an invisible demon following her and it protects her from any harm. Intriguing to say the least. When he was sobbing about how I didn't believe him when I caught him in a lie and wouldn't back down, I stood my ground and suddenly it was like a switch flipped. He went from hysterical crying to a grin and said, "Yeah, you're right. I just didn't want you to think less of me." Somehow a grown man hysterically crying for basically no reason was supposed to make me respect him. We broke up. The first time she slept over was after a night out. Seeing her swallow a veritable pharmacy of medications for her various mental health issues that, up until then, had seemed very abstract, could have been a bit uncomfortable in any circumstances. Seeing her do it drunkenly and miss some pills and take double and triple doses of others, that was truly alarming. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.